know behind me are all these blankets. Part of why we brought out the blankets is the reminder that there are activities that take place in the life of the church that we often don't see. And one of the challenges has been to bring forward items that I know get created and get done in large part as a way of saying to the wider world, we're with you, we care for you. And one of the gifts of this particular church has been those who have the creative ability with sewing machines and with tying edges of blankets. And as I look at it, I see at least one seafarer's hat in process of being made. These are all acts of love. We don't know who's going to receive these blankets. Whether we're talking the hospice-oriented quilts or whether we're talking the tied blankets, the recipients may well be individuals who have led dastardly lives. They may be individuals that if we stopped and talked to them, we would say, huh? God loves this person. On the other hand, and more likely, they will be people that we admire, that we respect, that have raised families, that have worked hard, and that have been salt of the earth. Our goal is simply to enfold someone, some individual, with a reminder that they are loved by God and loved by a broader community. So thank you. Those of you who participate in this kind of ministry, and those of you who support those who create, you are doing ministry. It's also especially why I don't mind seeing a hat being made in worship. Incidentally, just as a reminder to all of you, there is strong evidence that if you doodle, or if you knit, or if you do something with your fingers during a service or a meeting, there is a much higher retention level. It's about being engaged. And we often need to remember this. Our text for the day comes from Luke. You're going to recognize many of these words, but you're not going to necessarily recognize the context of many of these words, because we don't generally quote Luke in this section. We like to quote Matthew, we like to quote some of Mark, we like to quote from other areas. Because what Luke has done is he's just brought together a whole bunch of little things, but they all talk to each other in one message. Those of you who were on Men's Retreat with me, for instance, know about that in Men's Retreat we talked about a very different set of meetings related with if someone strikes you on the right cheek, turn and offer the other as well. That there really, in Matthew's Gospel, is a very different perspective of that. But in Luke, it really does sound like he means, just let the other person strike you. So listen to the words around and about, because we are meant to hear a message about loving that other kind of person. But I say to you that, listen. And whenever we hear that word, listen, in Scripture, in sacred texts, we are meant to really stop and say, some important messages are about to follow. Well, listen. Love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who abuse you. If anyone strikes you on the cheek, turn and offer the other as well. And if anyone takes away your coat, do not withhold even your shirt. Give to everyone who begs from you. And if anyone takes away your goods, do not ask ask for them back. Do to others as you would have others do to you. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. If you do good to those who do good to you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do the same. If you lend to those from whom you hope to receive, what credit is that to you? For even sinners lend to sinners to receive as much again. But love your enemies, do good, and lend, expecting nothing in return. Your reward will be great, and you will be called children of the Most High. For God is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. Be merciful, just as your Father and Mother in heaven is merciful. Do not judge, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. A good measure give, and it will be given to you. A good measure pressed down, shaken together, running over will be put into your lap. For the measure you give will be the measure that you get. So all through this is this sense, this reminder that Jesus really is giving to those around him that if we are being followers, we are expected to rise to a different level. We are expected to have the light shine through us. It's not good enough to simply do as good as the other person. About 3 months ago, I had just been at graveside service in the other part of the Boston region. And as I was returning from the graveside service, my car somehow swerved into a McDonald's. I fought it, believe me. And I decided to treat myself to one of those treats that I ought not treat myself, but that I love to treat myself, and it was a box of chicken nuggets. And for a change, I usually eat these as I drive. But for a change, I said, I'm sitting and I'm enjoying each one here in McDonald's. And so I'm sitting at a table, and 2 tables over were 2 gentlemen. And it was pretty clear as I overheard parts of their conversation that they were Christian, and that it was almost like a teacher-disciple relationship. And as they were talking, the one individual kept talking about my practice of faith. This is the teacher person, is what I call a kiosk type of faith. And his friend was saying, what's that mean? Please explain it to me. Well, he said, it goes something like this. What others put into it, I will give back. If you put into it a certain amount of kindness, I am going to give you back a certain amount of kindness. If you put in something mean, I am going to give back a certain amount of meanness. What you put in is what I'm giving back. A kiosk type of faith. And his friend was nodding and saying, oh, this sounds like a really good model of faith. I saw some of you giving me one of those looks. There's something wrong with this, isn't there? What's wrong with it? Help me. What was wrong with that model of faith?
Returning unkindness for unkindness.
Returning unkindness for unkindness. Well, he thought he was perfectly legit on this. It's what? It's destructive.
This speaks to me because I actually said those kinds of words to my grandfather about my treatment of my siblings when I was a child, and I've recently heard my children say it about their treatment of each other. And the idea being that, and I remember my grandfather looking over his glasses, that's not what it means to do unto others. You are projecting out a model. You are not reflecting the model that you have been given. You are to be the model to others as to how Christ is supposed to be in the world.
Exactly. That's what was troubling me as I listened as well. Because Jesus does not call us to reflect back what the other person is giving. Jesus calls us to a higher standard of living. That when we have people curse us, our response is to be a blessing. When people hurt us, we are to be kind back. When someone is unloving to us, we are to be loving. When people have needs, whether we think they deserve them or not, we are to respond with helping. The reminder Jesus gives is, everybody's good with this eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth stuff. That's not what we're called to be. We're called to rise above and to be that light, to be that salt to the earth. Now, I sat there listening to this conversation, and you know what went through my head? As part of what went through my head is I ought to get up and go over and engage with a conversation and say something like, I want you to know I'm a pastor and I don't agree with you. Well, that's actually kind of obvious because, I was coming from a funeral, and those of you who know me at funerals, that's when the clergy collar comes out. Guess what I didn't do?
Had another chicken nugget.
I had another chicken nugget. Remember, I had a box. It wasn't a little 4-pack or a little 6-pack. It was a box. So there was time for me to sit and listen and think. And I must confess, I did not engage. And to this day, I think I ought to have. You don't have to turn it into an argument. Sometimes you can simply get up and say, I just want you to know as a fellow Christian, I hear you talking about this kiosk type of faith. It's not the Jesus that I'm reading about. That he really does call me to a higher standard. It doesn't stop, though, people wanting to define. If you stop and think about that neighbor, that lawyer who approached Jesus and said, I get it, that maybe I'm supposed to love the neighbor. You remember that? Who should I love? And we get the parable of the Good Samaritan. And the parable of the Good Samaritan basically says, you love the person in need. The lawyer will ask one more question, but then who's my neighbor? Jesus will define it as the one in need. Because, if we can define it down, we can start to decide who gets the love and who doesn't. And in the end, Jesus simply says, it's the person in need. It's the person who may be your enemy. It's the person who may abuse you and use you. Now, in other sections of the Bible, we do note that Jesus does not suggest that we should be walked all over. He does not. Jesus does not say that abuse is okay. He does not. Jesus does not suggest that someone being mean or someone cursing is okay. He does not. And if someone is abusing you regularly, if someone is walking all over you, if someone is cursing you, find ways to minimize that or end that relationship. Because God does not want that. What God also doesn't want is for you to lower yourself to that person's standards, but somehow to always rise above and be among those who are a blessing in this world, among those who show love, who show grace, all the time, no matter what. Now that leaves you set up. If I come up to you and say, you know, I love you, because Jesus commands me to. You absolutely don't know whether you're my friend or my enemy. But let me tell you, I love this congregation. I love the people in this congregation. Sometimes we try each other a little bit. And if I don't try your patience, sometimes I'm not doing my job. And if you don't try me sometimes, you're not being human. But in the end, there's love in this room, and you can feel it. People care for each other, and you can feel it. And you can see that individuals here in this house, in this family, are trying to be God's light and God's salt. Thank you.
As people who are salt and light, there is much for us to share as we live out our lives of faith. Today we especially celebrate